if there are psyops around a thing, it's more likely to be real. And then if UFOs are real, there are going to be psyops around it.
Why else would they invest manpower into it?
Why would they invest so much manpower at the highest levels?
Right.
Everybody should think for themselves, and you should distrust anybody who's saying it's definitely this. But then you have things like, you have this book called UFOs and Nukes by a guy named Robert Hastings, and we've talked about this, he documents 167 Q-cleared ICBM security personnel, radar operators, guys that
the most
work,
psychologically sound people in the military, right?
They're on the PRP program, the personal reliability program, where they have to report if they're taking ibuprofen or Tylenol. They inherently have to be the paradigm of a sound mind, because you are guarding the crown jewels. Like, you would never let crazy person next to a nuke, right? And in certain cases they have their finger on the button, and so all these guys see tic tacs, saucers, orbs. Often they're messing with comms links, shutting down the nukes, rendering them inoperable. In the case of Malmstrom's 67, Robert Salas. In 64, Vandenberg, you have a nuke wrapping around an Atlas V dummy missile and taking it out of the sky. And then you have Air Force Office of Special Investigations people like Rick Doty. In fact, Rick Doty is literally one of these people who shows up with this guy Mario Woods at Ellsworth Air Force Base in 1977 and swearing them to secrecy and saying, never talk about this again, and demoting them in cases where they do come out when they speak to Robert Hastings. Robert Hastings getting threatening phone calls. And so to me, if you were to, you have to think about everything as like a database. And it's like, okay, there's one thing if you have like the, National UFO Reporting Center or MUFON. It's another thing if you have this, database which I would call UFOs and Nukes, of these inherently very credible people coming forward saying they've seen things.
Yes.
And then you could say, oh, okay, well, it's just some U.S. deep state cabal thing. You're like, okay, maybe. But even then, your null hypothesis gets pretty fantastical and weird if that's what you're saying. But then you look at Fukushima, Lino, which is a town right next to Fukushima, next to the prefecture, where they have their civilian nuclear energy grid. And they've had it there since the 70s. They're famous for their nuclear spill in 2011.
Right.
And in the 90s, they built a museum dedicated to UFOs. And Vice did a documentary about how obsessed the townspeople are with UFOs. And it's probably due to the nuclear energy presence. And you have a famous case in Bariloche, Argentina, where they have their civilian nuclear grid, where a commercial pilot sees a UFO, and you have stories around Chernobyl. And so this nuclear connection is extremely important. Then you hear about UFOs basically being bound up within nuclear secrecy, and Battelle Memorial Institute being, very big part of UFO research. You look at the special definition of nuclear material under the Atomic Energy Commission, which was in 1954, and it's basically any material with emitting any sort of radiation. So alpha, beta, gamma radiation, anything is born secret, and it's restricted data, meaning that you don't even have to fall under the direct clearances of government. If you are a private aerospace corporation and you pick this stuff up, it is restricted for you too. So it's like born classified. So you have all this evidence that there's this kind of like DOE atomic research UFO thing that's been going on for a very long time. And I think that's where you have to start, this coherent picture. And then, there's psyops, there's weird shit. But I think what people don't understand is that if there are psyops around a thing, it means the thing is more likely to be real. How many How many Bigfoot psyops do you know?
None.
Yeah, because nobody would fucking believe it.
Right.
Psyops are 95% true and 5% false, and the 5% that's false matters a ton because it throws you entirely off the trail.
It's 95% true and 5% false?
Yes.
Oh, really?
That's what people don't understand about psyops. They think psyops
are the opposite.
That's sure. They think that it's 95% false, but you dismiss it out of hand. If it was 95% false, you'd be like, "Oh, it's Bigfoot. Fuck them. I'm not going to believe that." UFOs are standard deviations more charismatic than any other. If it's the psyop,
well, Bigfoot's more believable than a fucking alien coming here from another universe, right? It's a hominid. There's a big hominid. Right. Which is why, and I'm more in the like Jacques Vallée, Diana Pasulka line of thinking, where I don't think, little green men from Zeta Reticuli is the answer to what we're seeing in the airspace. Shout out to Mike Masters.
Shout out to Mike Masters.
We'll talk about that.
I love Mike Masters, and he does some really important work.
My favorite.
He's amazing. Yeah, and he's great because he's thinking about this stuff inductively. Most people don't realize they're bringing priors into thinking about UFOs that deal with movies they've seen and the zeitgeist and culture. And so they're not looking at the phenomena ground up first principles, and he is. And that's why Mike Masters is amazing. And people should definitely follow him. But that's what people don't. So the psyop, I think is a really important point. If there are psyops around a thing, it's more likely to be real. And then if UFOs are real, there are going to be psyops around it. Obviously, if you have this like core important truth, there are going to be psyops around it. If you're talking about the nature of reality, obviously, but it's ephemeral and hard to detect, and it's like this thing that happens only to certain people. Of course, you're going to co-opt that, manipulate it for narratives, and you're going to have all these competing factions trying to like overlay their narratives on top of the thing. So these things are psyop or real is positive sum. It's not zero sum. The fact that it's real means there's going to be a psyop. The fact that there's a psyop probably means there's an element of reality to it.
Why else would they invest manpower into it?
Why would they invest so much manpower at the highest levels? And so that's, I think people don't get that, and they snap it to grid. They're like, this is a psyop or this is real, and it's like, no, there are psyops and it's real. It's the same. It's both, and that makes it really interesting.
100%.
And worthy of investigation. Everybody should think for themselves, and you should distrust anybody who's saying it's definitely this. Crazy one for you. So in 2010, after Robert Hastings wrote his book, which was 2008, F.E. Warren experienced an outage for.
What's F.E. Warren?
F.E. Warren is a nuclear base in Wyoming.
Oh, okay.
And it experienced an outage for, they said 59 minutes, but Robert Hastings did back channeling and it was 24 hours. And President Obama was briefed on this. Now, F.E. Warren outage Atlantic. F.E. Warren, outage Atlantic. And you'll see that this was reported on by like mainstream media. And I don't know, go to
Atlantic Broadband?
No, the Atlantic, like the periodical or whatever.
Oh, and the Atlantic Magazine.
Yeah, Atlantic Magazine.
Okay.
Magazine.
Atlantic Magazine.
Yeah.
Magazine. Was it a power outage?
Failure shuts that third article. Down. Yeah, exactly. So this is really crazy. So President Obama was briefed on this, and Hastings back channeled with this guy, this retired missile technician named John Mills. And he back channeled with some missile security officers on site, and were like, there was a Tic Tac flying around all over the base, and that caused the outage.
Is this like one of the Minutemen missile silos, like where they have those underground ICBMs?
I know Malmstrom is. I don't know if F.E. Warren is, maybe, but. This is what's crazy is you can even see in the article, at the top of the article, engineering. So power is crossed out.
Why?
And then it goes into engineering failure. I think it's covering their ass. I think they don't want it to seem like it was attributed to a UFO or to a Tic Tac or whatever, which again, Robert Hastings backtracked. And by the way, I should say, I think, I was wrong about the right path thing. So I don't want to like conflate, like this is another thing that I think is very legit. But I mean,
that's huge when they shut down a nuclear base.
Obama was briefed. Yeah.
Right. That's big. That's a big deal.
No shit. Yeah. And then you're back channeling with these guys who say that it's attributed to a Tic Tac flying around in the airspace.
Right.
And then they're crossing out power and they're making it seem like it's an engineering thing.
What did I say? 3 other LCCs were successfully restarted. The suspect LCC remains offline. What is an LCC?
Let's see here. The LCC, Launch Control Center.
Oh, okay. So the Launch Control Centers.
Yeah, they lost comms. Like they couldn't launch the thing if they wanted to.
They interrogate each missile in sequence. So if they begin to send signals out when they're not supposed to, receivers on the missiles themselves will notice this and send out error codes. It left 50 missiles in the dark. The missiles then restarted one of the LCCs and began to normally. Wow, dude, that's freaky.
Man. It's really freaky. And then you're doing, Hastings, who I think is a very honest actor, is doing back channeling with these guys, and they're like, "There's a Tic Tac flying around, and that's what caused the outage." And then I think one of them faces kind of career reprisals as a result of this back channel with Hastings and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then you have that power is crossed out and engineering is put up.
Weird.
It's like the live editing is shown on the Atlantic article to like cover it up.
We're on the Brave browser. The Brave browser shows you all. I wonder if it shows it in Chrome.
It does show it in Chrome too.
Oh, it does too?
It does, because I put it in my documentary on Hastings.
Okay.
So anyway, so the Wright Pat thing, that is interesting that I guess it sounds like they were just incursions on Wright Pat, and then they ended up shutting the airspace down as a result of that. It wasn't a comms link failure, so that's my bad. But
I think they were getting ready for the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, so they had to like start figuring out Philadelphia. They knew people were going to be looting and terrorizing the whole town. It was going to turn into Afghanistan for a week.
That's funny. Exactly. But that just goes to the point that like if these things are showing up around sensitive military sites, it points to the nuclear connection. It points to this more generalizable three-body problem narrative where they're not just showing up at nuclear sites, they're showing up at advanced science research sites and the most sensitive military sites. And that was the case with the New Jersey drone. The whole New Jersey drone, the name New Jersey drone is a psyop because they weren't just in New Jersey. They were at Lake and Heath.
They were in Florida too.
They were in Florida. They were everywhere. And they weren't just drones. The drones were drones. When the shit you could see that were taken down occasionally, that was blinking red and green because they're meeting FAA regs. Obviously drones.
Yeah.
You know, like clearly those were drones. In fact, even the White House statement on the drones, the press secretary,
Trump said,
Trump says it's very weird, very strange. It's not adversary, and they're going to the they're coming from the garage, and we know where the garage is. So that's interesting, right?
That's weird, yeah. The way he talks is just so confusing sometimes.
It's very confusing. But then the press secretary tries to minimize it and say there's nothing to see here. She says, "Oh, they were FAA approved. They were research drones."
Yeah.
See, that begs a question. If you were given orders by the president who told you we will clear this up immediately, because he was asked this as soon as he was elected. And he goes, what happened there? We have to figure that out. And he like orders somebody to figure it out.
Yeah.
So those were your orders. You're saying we have FAA research drones. What were they researching? If it's a prosaic, easy thing to explain away, you say it.
How come no one asked that?
If it is not, then you don't say it. Yeah. So I think it points to some more exotic answers. Again, I don't know. You have to think probabilistically about all this stuff, and I'd be open to it not being UFOs. But like, I think there's a lot of evidence. Also, Southport, New Brunswick, Duke Energy Plant, there was UFOs showing up there too. So like,
so drones or UFOs?
UFOs.
Meaning what? What do they look like?
They look more like these plasma orb style things. Yeah.
Like the Bledsoe orbs?
More like the Bledsoe orbs. Like those look very different than these like fixed wing, like they're just different.
Okay.
That's why the whole thing's aside. It's like not New Jersey and it's not just drones.
Yeah.
It's a whole host of stuff. And it's again, you get into these weird kind of questions of like,
were they trying to distract? Were they trying to run a simulation? There's so many like
many
options.
Questions.
Yeah.
But also in the case in which it wasn't ours. Say in the case in which there were real UFOs, like not ours, not prosaically explained UFOs.
Yeah.
You would probably put some stuff out to research it.
Yeah.
You put some of our stuff out.
Right,
so it's like really murky, and it's way more charismatic and easy and goes viral much quicker to be like there's a loose nuke on the eastern seaboard.
Right.
That will go viral way faster than like it's actually a whole host of things. It's kind of complicated.
It's not that interesting.
More new, exactly. So I think that's kind of what happened, and that's why like if there were psyops around explaining things away, I think that's why it was so charismatic. But then you talk to like the nuclear support teams, the emergency teams, Nest or whatever. All of those guys were like, no, there's nothing there. Like nobody was like being evacuated. And, like, so it clearly wasn't that. So it's weird.